good evening. Viewers, the entire world's attention is going to turn to Afghanistan as U.S.-led foreign troops prepare to leave the country next year. The NATO withdrawal will bring an end to the military response of President George W. Bush against Afghanistan's Taliban rulers, which was launched with lofty promises after the September 11 attacks. The entire NATO exercise caused Afghanistan a lot of suffering, a lot of loss of life, and no gains, because the country is not secure. Ceaseless wars since 1970s, wars in which external powers, the US, the Soviet Union, and Afghanistan's neighbors have been active participants, have made Afghanistan's devastation all the greater. The legality and morality of US drone attacks across the Afghanistan-Pakistan border and increasingly in other countries is also a subject of open debate these days, raising questions about laws of war, human rights, and national sovereignty. As the departure of foreign troops draws closer, many in Afghanistan and its regional neighborhood are concerned about the future of Afghanistan. There are many questions rising today. Taliban are stronger than they were immediately after their eviction from Kabul today. The militancy has spread far beyond the country's borders, and the mission that President Barack Obama called just war is reaching its finale without its most important aims fulfilled. Will influential players of the international community help Afghanistan, or will they walk away like they did following the 1989 Soviet retreat, leaving regional powers and Afghan factions to fight it at its own? We will discuss all these aspects and the recent development of US government caught Afghan government red-handed in the involvement of supporting terrorism in Pakistan through Pakistan's Taliban. We will talk on this recent development as well. Today in my show, I have Mr. Zahid Hamid to talk on all these aspects. Assalamu alaikum, and thank you for joining me. Mr. Zahid Hamid, before we start our discussion, we have a report put together on Afghanistan situation. Let's have a look at that, and then we will start our discussion.
Some 12 years after the NATO invasion of Afghanistan, combat troops are scheduled to leave the country by the end of 2014. The International Security and Assistance Force (ISAF), there are 100,000 NATO troops serving in Afghanistan from almost 50 contributing nations. About 58,000 are US troops. The number of US forces in Afghanistan peaked at about 101,000 in 2011, taking full NATO forces number to about 140,000. Extra 33,000 American soldiers sent as part of surge has now been withdrawn, and Washington plans to carry on winding down combat operation during 2013. Of the current remaining number of troops, 34,000, will return to the US by early 2014. Both France and Canada ended their combat mission early, although they have yet to bring all their troops home. The second largest contributor to NATO's Afghanistan operation has about 8,000 troops in Afghanistan, with 1,000 more due to be brought home over the summer. Most of the remainder will leave by the end of 2014. Australia has said most of its troops will be home by the end of 2013. Contributing countries including Germany, Italy, Australia, Poland, and Turkey. As of 2030, 10 of thousands of people were killed in the war, mostly militants and ordinary civilians. Over 4,000 ISAF soldiers and civilian contractors, as well as over 10,000 Afghan National Security Forces also died.
Mr. Zahid Hamid, as you saw the report, and I would like to start my show with the recent development that happened, and New York Times reported this Tuesday, exactly the day when in London, the Prime Minister of England, David Cameron, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Nawaz Sharif Saab, and Hamid Karzai were meeting. New York Times reported that US caught Afghan government red-handed in plotting with Pakistani Taliban in an attempt to acquire a stronger position in a regional power game. According to report, plan involved Afghan intelligence trying to work with Pakistan Taliban in order to find a trump card in regional power game that is going to intensify after US withdrawal next year. Afghan government caught transporting Latifullah Masood, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan second-in-command, to Kabul to take revenge from Pakistani military intelligence. Now, the same news have been published here in the news as well today, in which they say U.S. NATO confirms Kabul daily nexus to sabotage peace in Pakistan. And the arrest of Latifullah Masood, Tehreek-e-Taliban's Pakistan second-in-command, by the U.S. forces and his subsequent interrogation has badly exposed how Kabul has been fueling terrorism inside Pakistan. And it has been confirmed that the recent attack on Major General Sanaullah Khan and 2 other army men, the Kabul and the New Delhi, but the later attacks on Peshawar Church in Qissa Khwani Bazaar and on an official bus of Peshawar Secretariat were also masterminded by the same nexus by using local militants. What do you have to say on this recent development?
You see, these 2 particular news, one appearing on behalf of NATO and the other coming from the New York Times, are the most damning confirmation of the terror campaign which was being waged against Pakistan for the last 12 years by not just by Afghan government and Delhi, but also by the CIA. We have been, the security and defense analysts and the Pakistani military in Pakistan have been constantly telling the world that Pakistan is under attack. Pakistan is being subjected to most bloodiest campaign of terror, and the terror is coming into Pakistan from Afghanistan, being sent in by raw CIA and Afghan intelligence services. But the world would not believe. Pakistan was branded as an epicenter of terror without realizing the fact that more people have died in Pakistan, more devastation, more damages, more destruction has been done in Pakistan since the American occupation of Afghanistan than it has been done in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, for example, 50,000 people have died or wounded. In Pakistan, over 100,000 people have died or wounded. In Afghanistan, over 15,000 troops have died from the government side fighting the Taliban resistance. In Pakistan, over 35,000 troops have died or have been wounded.
Mr. Zaid Hamid, is the involvement of Afghan intelligence in the terrorism, in spreading terrorism in Pakistan, came as a surprise to you?
Not at all.
India was always there. Did we ever suspect Afghan intelligence?
If anyone has seen the program that we are doing now, the previous editions that we have done on the same channel, same programs here, we have been constantly saying this. For the last 7 years, we have been emphasizing this, that Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, the most bloodiest, most dirtiest, most ruthless terror outfit, is supported by Afghan intelligence, by RAW and by CIA. We have been saying this all along because, and now NATO confirms it, New York Times confirms it, because of a disagreement between the Indian intelligence RAW and CIA. Both wanted to control TTP according to their own choices, and RAW sent a delegation, a convoy of Afghan army, Afghan National Army, to bring Latifullah Masood, the number 2 of Hakimullah Masood, the man who runs the dreaded TTP. He was being brought to Jalalabad to have a meeting with the Indian RAW intelligence officers. And meanwhile, on the way, US Special Forces, on the orders of CIA, picked him up because he was primarily a CIA asset, which RAW was trying to utilize for their own purposes as well. So their infight has exposed the entire network. So what is happening, and then let me read it out to you, because this is exactly what the New York Times further said, is the Afghan officials confirmed that the ultimate plan was to take revenge on the Pakistan military. Now this is something very interesting to note. The objective was to destroy Pakistan army. New York Times acknowledged that the botched Afghan operation will now lend weight to Pakistani claims of militants in Afghanistan, presenting Pakistan with the constant threat, claiming which nobody in the national community previously heeded. Nobody in the past believed what Pakistan was saying. But now everything is in the open, everything is confirmed, and Pakistan is angry. Pakistan is angry, Pakistani patriots are angry, Pakistani armed forces are angry. Now, and the fact of the matter is that now we have a license, now we have a reason, now we have all the reason to deploy all the forces we have to crush this insurgency in Afghanistan. The fact of the matter is it's confirmed. the insurgency which is killing Pakistan, which is destroying Pakistan. We have suffered almost $100 billion worth of losses in the last 7 to 8 years. 100,000 people dead, 35,000 troops dead and wounded. Now, this cost is all because of American occupation of Afghanistan. So our primary enemy of Pakistan is USA, is CIA, their occupation of Afghanistan, because it is under their umbrella that they have allowed the RAW to operate.
Why would US expose Afghanistan and India in front of Pakistan at this point?
You see, they have not exposed. It was God sent. It was a botched operation. It was a misunderstanding between two allies against Pakistan. Who would control TTP? Who would have more influence? Americans wanted to go slow perhaps for the time being, because they have to take out, they have to withdraw from Afghanistan. Pakistan army is angry. Pakistan was angry. And the heat was coming up on the Americans from the Pakistan side that they must control TTP. Otherwise, Pakistan would stop or block their retreat from Afghanistan. So American stakes are involved. There are no Indian stakes involved in Afghanistan.
So it's about the power on TTP, that all these three factors, India, Afghanistan, and US,
there are lots of
fighting.
factors. Americans are vulnerable to Pakistani demands. The fact of the matter is the Americans' jugular is controlled by Pakistan. Americans have to leave. Their air bridge goes over Pakistan. So Pakistan was putting pressure on the Americans to control the TTP, after, particularly as you said, after the assassination of the general in that area, the commanding officer of that area,
Sanaullah.
General Sanaullah. So the Pakistani pressure on the Americans was forcing the Americans to somehow control or check or put a hold on the TTP operation. Indians were not happy at that. Indians wanted more and more of these terrorist operations to continue. They see an opportunity. Indians have got nothing to lose. Even if the Americans suffer, Indians wouldn't be bothered about it. So Indians wanted, and Karzai is actually acting as a further proxy to the RAW, helping the Afghan National Army, deploying the Afghan National Army to support the TTP insurgency against Pakistan. All confirmed now.
Now also in this New York Times report, they say that Afghan officials complained that Pakistani military intelligence has sheltered and nurtured Taliban and supported their insurgency against Afghan government. So is this true, the complaint from Afghan government that Pakistan intelligence has been involved in nurturing the Taliban against Afghanistan?
You understand one thing. The Americans have been defeated in Afghanistan comprehensively by the Afghan Taliban in combat. And to support an insurgency, to support a war of resistance against the Americans, if Pakistan ISI was doing it, there would be evidence of Pakistani ISI supplying them weapons, supplying them money, giving them training areas, giving them training bases, giving them technical expertise, exactly as we did to the Afghan Mujahideen against the Soviets. There is no such evidence which exists. Pakistan has not sent a single truck of ammunition for the Afghan Taliban ever. But we have sent 1 million trucks for NATO, for the Americans, for the CIA. Yes, we have. We have sent hundreds of thousands of flights across Pakistan to Afghanistan to support the occupation. But we have not sent a single vehicle supporting the Afghan Taliban. So this allegation is absolutely rubbish. How can Pakistan, if ISI or Pakistan Army was supporting the Afghan resistance, there would be evidence. What evidence there is? Is there any training camp? Is there any training base? Is there any logistic supply line that is going through? Is Pakistan Army advisors working alongside Taliban, fighting against the Americans? No, this is not happening. So the point is, but this is one thing we know now. One thing that we know, that for the last 12 years, the insurgency that has been waging in Pakistan, and that insurgency started immediately after the American invasion of Afghanistan. Before that, when the Taliban were in Afghanistan, there was no insurgency in Pakistan. There were no suicide bombings. There were no attacks on Christians and minorities. There was no attack on Pakistan military. There was no attack on Pakistani armed forces or the people. What happened? When the Taliban left, the Americans came, Indians came with them as well. And straight away, Karzai came. Karzai joined hands with Indians and the CIA. The nexus of raw CIA and Afghan intelligence creates the devastation that we have in Pakistan today. So coming to this, now when the Americans say they are going to leave Afghanistan, let us discuss.
Before Mr. Zaid Hamid, we move on to that, let me ask you this, that since Karzai was plotted by US so that he can be a puppet of US brought Karzai themselves, and they did bring India as well in Afghanistan. They both were plotted according to US, and then now both of them, Karzai and India, you think they're trying to stand at their own and ignore US, and that's why now they're getting out of hands from US as well?
Lately you are saying that relations relationship between Karzai and the Americans have been not going very good, because Karzai is losing his ground rapidly. Americans have realized he's not going to deliver. So now they're going to be presidential elections in Afghanistan as well. A new face is going to come up. Karzai
in
is
6
basically
months he will be gone.
He's useless now. He's basically disposable toilet paper. Now he's going to be dumped into the flush and flushed out completely. So he knows it. So he's angry. So naturally he has to hedge his bets. But he can never come close to Pakistan. Pakistan is extremely angry with Karzai. So where would he go? He would go to India. He would go to Delhi. That's where he is close. And obviously that's what he's doing right now to hedge his bets. He has Indian intelligence have offered him that we'll give you support, we'll give you protection, we'll give you all the support and money that you need in Afghanistan to survive and to remain alive. But for that you have to deploy the RAW's policies, deploying TTP against Pakistan. And this is what they're doing now. For Pakistan, you see, the exposure of this nexus globally, this nexus has now become global, that Delhi and Kabul are now conniving together, have been working together to wage this war of terror in Pakistan. This gives a legitimate reason to Pakistan military and the Pakistan government to move inside Afghanistan through all forces available at our disposal, diplomatic, political, military, support to Taliban or any other asset which we have in Afghanistan, to crush this nexus. And we will do that. We will definitely do that. And while the Americans are leaving Afghanistan, this is something that now Pakistan has to ask Americans, why did they allow this nexus to take place? Why did the Americans allow? If Americans were not part of it, how can they be so stupid that they didn't know about it? Of course they lied. Right. Of course they knew. Of course CIA knew. Of course Pakistan has been telling them for the last 7 years that Pakistan is facing an existential threat, ultimate devastation, because of a nexus between RAW, CIA and Afghan intelligence. And why didn't the American army do anything about it? And now Pakistan has a legitimate reason. And the fact of the matter is that we are angry and we can respond in any way we like, and Americans will see it soon.
So in 2014, after the withdrawal of US and NATO allies, what do we see in Afghanistan?
You see, let me make it very clear to you. Americans are not leaving. There are three scenarios. Either they take their entire troops out and all extra regional forces, all Americans and NATO and Blackwaters leave Afghanistan. That is not happening. Ideally, this is what Pakistan is going to go for. Pakistan must go for this option, because the presence of foreign forces is the umbrella which is allowing RAW to operate against Pakistan. When the foreign forces are gone, there will be no protective umbrella on Indians in Afghanistan. And then Afghan Taliban and Pakistan can eliminate the Indian influence completely from Afghanistan. The entire insurgency and terrorism and violence in Pakistan will come to a stop immediately. So for Pakistan, it is absolutely critical to eliminate Indian influence in Afghanistan. And for that, it is critical now to remove foreign forces from Afghanistan. So while Americans are saying that they are withdrawing, but they're not withdrawing in reality. In reality, they are discussing and debating the number of troops they are going to leave behind. There are multiple bases, at least a dozen of them in Afghanistan, the American and foreign bases, which are being expanded, refurbished, rebuilt, which are being expanded into housing the American troops which will remain in Afghanistan after the main body of American forces leave. But still, there would be from 10,000 to 75,000 troops are definitely going to stay in Afghanistan.
But do you think that Karzai would figure out that under what laws these troops would be staying in Afghanistan? Will they be answerable to Afghanistan court?
There is only one law in Afghanistan right now. That's the American law. That's the American martial law. Whatever the American military wants, they do it. Karzai doesn't even exist. The man has no credibility. He has no say. He has no power. He has no authority. He's himself surviving on handouts from the Americans. So the fact of the matter is that when the Americans, if the Americans say they are not leaving Afghanistan, what option would Pakistan have? Would we allow the Americans to stay in Afghanistan indefinitely so that the RAW can continue to do what RAW has been doing for the last 10 years?
Shahzad Hamid, we will continue our show right from here. We will stay with us. We'll be right back after a short break. Viewers, we are are talking on the recent developments and the recent happenings, what NATO and U.S. forces has exposed of Afghan government's involvement with Pakistan Taliban to create insurgency and terrorism inside Pakistan. Also, what's been said is that U.S. commanders have confirmed that there does exist safe havens across Durand Line where Pakistani militants are trained and equipped to launch terrorism in Pakistan. Mr. Zahid Hamid, what do you have to say about this, that there is a safe havens across Durand Line where Pakistani militants, Taliban, are trained and equipped and then launched for terrorism in Pakistan?
You see, Pakistan has now two options to deal with this. Number one is to launch preemptive strike ourselves across the Durand Line into Afghanistan on these terror camps and bases where Indian RAW and CIA is training these militants to wage this war against Pakistan. We have had enough. For the last 12 years, Pakistan has been respecting the Durand Line. Pakistan has not been crossing the Durand Line into Afghanistan and asking the Americans to prevent the attacks from Afghanistan from coming into Pakistan. But the Americans have not done it. And now the nexus between RAW and Afghan intelligence and CIA has been exposed to such an extent that now Pakistan has a global justification for launching preemptive strikes. Or alternately, what we can do is we can openly start declaring our support to the Afghan resistance, which Afghan Taliban, Afghan Pashtuns, who can then in turn eliminate the entire TTP, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, the proxy insurgent group of CIA and RAW, which is waging a war against Pakistan. So Afghan Taliban can eliminate them as well, or Pakistan army can move into Afghanistan, or we can make airstrikes into Afghanistan to eliminate those bases. We know their location. For a long time we knew them. We knew the bases, we knew the training camps, we knew where they are based, but Pakistan has not been going across into Afghanistan. Now we should, we must. For the simple reason is that now this nexus has become exposed. It has become global. The fact that the world was not believing Pakistan, now Pakistan stands on highest moral ground to launch such a strike inside Afghanistan. Alternatively, we should also punish the Americans for it, because we have suffered much more than even the Afghan nation has suffered because of this American occupation of Afghanistan. American must be made to pay for this.
But the question raises here is, as we see in the report, that it has been confirmed the recent attack on Major General Sanaullah Khan, and then the attack on Peshawar Church, and then the attack on the Peshawar Secretariat bus were done by these Afghan government's insiders. So right after APC, when everyone in Pakistan, all the political parties agreed on having the peace talks with Taliban, we saw Major General getting killed. This means U.S. wasn't involved. This was the Delhi and Kabul nexus that was involved, that was doing it.
Talking to TTP would be completely useless, because TTPs are proxies. We must strike at the handlers. We must eliminate the handlers who are the sponsors, backers, financiers and trainers of this insurgent group. Because it's like Free Syrian Army in Syria. They are not an independent organization to decide their own policies. They are being funded by NATO, they are being funded by CIA, they are being funded by Mossad, they are being funded by Saudis, they are being funded by foreign powers to wage a war against Syria. Now similarly, if Pakistan wants to talk to TTP, that would be a military defeat. That would be a surrender in front of this terrorist outfit. And that is now, especially when you know that they are being supported by the Afghans and the CIA and the Indian Secret Service. Where should we strike? We should strike at their interests inside Afghanistan, which is the battlefield, which is the training area, which is the base areas, which is from where the attacks are coming into Pakistan. And this is exactly what we are saying. The time has come that Pakistan should now declare an independent Afghan policy. So far, for the last 12 years, Pakistan has been following a foreign policy dictated by the Americans. But now the American betrayal has become too obvious. It's hurting us now. It has bled Pakistan to death almost. And now Pakistan must acknowledge, accept, respect Afghan Taliban as a legitimate party of conflict. If Doha, Qatar can open their offices, an office of Afghan Taliban must be opened in Islamabad also. Pakistan must give them recognition, start dialogue and talks with them the way we talk to Kabul regime. because the Kabul regime is a puppet regime which would fall once the foreign forces leave. And that is precisely the reason Americans don't want to leave. If Americans are talking to Afghan Taliban, what are they talking about? I mean, that's interesting. What are the Americans talking to Afghan Taliban about? The only thing the Americans are talking is, Americans are asking, negotiating with them, that if the American bases remain in Afghanistan, Afghan Taliban should not attack them, and Afghan Taliban should recognize the government in Kabul. Both the conditions that Afghan Taliban will not accept. Afghan Taliban will continue to attack the bases which are left by the Americans in Afghanistan, and Afghan Taliban will never accept this democracy, this election, and the Kabul regime. So, removal of foreign forces remains a precondition for the Afghan resistance. And as we have seen, when entire NATO, entire American military might cannot defeat the Afghan Pashtun resistance, a reduced American force in Afghanistan is hopelessly ill-equipped to do this task. So Pakistan will have to step in. Pakistan will have to definitely take matters into its own hand. We have taken enough beating by a passive diplomacy. Now we have to get very aggressive, very active, beat the hell out of enemies inside Afghanistan. Time to do it.
So you're saying that Pakistan has to beat the Taliban inside Afghanistan? Pakistani Taliban. We cannot fight the Pakistani Taliban within Pakistan.
We can.
How do you expect us to go and fight Pakistani Taliban in Afghanistan?
You see, defeating the Pakistani Taliban in Pakistan is 5 days' job. It's absolutely no problem if their supplies and logistics are blocked from Afghanistan. See, what happens is, whenever Pakistan army launches operations against them, they simply withdraw into Afghanistan, where they are protected by Indian RAW and Afghan intelligence and CIA. If you cut this nexus, if you break this nexus between RAW and Pakistani Taliban, defeating Pakistani Taliban is a 20-minute job. There's absolutely no problem.
So Karzai would be gone in the next 6 months from Afghanistan. And if Karzai promoted this Afghan involvement with the Pakistani Taliban to create terrorism in Pakistan, this would be vanishing as well. What do you see the Taliban, the Afghan Taliban coming over and taking over Afghanistan? How would their reaction be towards Pakistan?
You see, the fact is that the Northern Alliance government, the Northern Alliance has almost disintegrated now, doesn't exist anymore, but the people who would participate in the Afghan elections now, they all know that in the absence of Afghan Taliban, as a party to these elections, the elections will not have any legitimacy, especially if the foreign forces are also not present. There is no doubt about this, that Afghan Taliban will take over Afghanistan once the foreign forces leave. Now the only question is, if the Uzbeks, Tajiks and Hazaras are wise enough, they will involve Pakistan, Iran and Turkey in negotiating a broad-based government in Kabul. And this is something that all regional countries and all ethnic communities in Afghanistan must do. Afghan Taliban should also realize that they cannot kill every Uzbek, every Tajik and every Hazara in Afghanistan. And Uzbek, Tajik and Hazaras should also realize, let bygones be bygone, let's make a new beginning with Pashtuns, and you have to coexist with them as Afghans.
So Afghan Taliban have announced that they will not participate in Afghan elections. So Afghan Taliban are not in these elections. Then we are left with Uzbeks, Tajiks,
and Hazaras. And few Pashtuns, those Pashtuns who have no following.
So all these communities, other than Taliban, it depends on them to decide the future of Afghanistan, or it would be only on Afghan Talibans?
You see, as I said, Afghan Taliban have got the gun in their hand. They are the strong party. All these Pashtuns who are part of Karzai government, and Uzbeks and Tajiks and Hazaras and the Afghan National Army, all of them put together cannot make a stand against Afghan Taliban. Afghan Taliban are determined, ruthless fighters. Afghan Taliban have defeated the Americans. Their morale is high. They have reclaimed their land after 10 years of war, and now nothing is going to stop. If American and NATO cannot stop Afghan Taliban, how can the Afghan National Army stop them? They cannot. So this is the fact on the ground. So this is where the regional countries, Pakistan, Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, Iran, Turkey, perhaps China, will have to get together and tell all factions of Afghanistan, let's sit around around the table, we'll hammer out an agreement of a broad-based government. But before that, let's agree to throw out every foreign troop, every foreign soldier from Afghanistan. In the presence of even one American soldier in Afghanistan, in the presence of one NATO soldier or one Blackwater soldier in Afghanistan, the war will not stop. The Afghan Taliban will continue to attack the foreign forces, and this is given, this is written.
So what's going to happen to Afghan-US security agreement? It's still not clear, and they have suspended the negotiations till June.
Afghan security agreement is with the Karzai government. When the Karzai disintegrates and disappears, so with him that piece of paper would be. So the fact of the matter is, you see, the hard realities of Afghanistan is, in Afghanistan, papers and agreements do not matter. Gun matters. The one who has bigger army, the one with a bigger organized group, the one who can fight back ruthlessly, they matter. And in that equation, Afghan Taliban are very strong. Afghan Taliban are somebody, and this is where we are saying now that Pakistan, it's payback time for Pakistan. Americans are defeated. They are leaving. Even to leave, they need Pakistan's permission. The death of 100,000 Pakistanis must not be forgiven. Americans are equally responsible. CIA is responsible. RAW is responsible. Karzai is responsible. And they'll have to pay for it. They must be made to pay for it.
Okay. Now, there's a quick question, Mr. Zahid Hamid, that do you think the patch-up between U.S. and Taliban is easier than the patch-up between Afghan Talibans and Karzai themselves?
You see, the point is, there is not going to be any patch-up between the U.S. forces and Afghan Taliban. Afghan Taliban will only give them one condition. That is, get out while you still can. That's it. Leave while you still can, before we bury you in Afghanistan.
And then what happens between Afghan Taliban and Karzai?
And that is something, with keeping the previous experience in mind. What did the Afghan Taliban did to Najibullah, who was a puppet of the Soviets? They pulled him out of his palace, hanged him. And that's what they'll do to Karzai.
So the Karzai with ill intentions towards Pakistan will be eliminated. Now we are left with Afghan Talibans only.
And we are left with Tajiks, we are left with Uzbeks, we are left with Hazaras, we are left with family of Ahmad Shah Massoud, we are left with, and all those people are Afghans. They are different ethnic communities of Afghanistan. And Afghan Taliban will have to live with them. In the past, Afghan Taliban have been constantly fighting with Uzbeks, Tajiks and Hazaras, with the forces of Ahmad Shah Massoud. Ahmad Shah Massoud was the legendary leader of Afghanistan. He was a true, genuine freedom fighter, a good Afghan, one of the finest they have produced. But Afghan Taliban could not accommodate him. And this is a mistake. This was a blunder that the Afghan Taliban did in the past. Now they will have to recover. They'll have to undo the damage that they have done. It is because of this war between the Afghan ethnic communities that the foreign occupation forces were able to come into Afghanistan.
So Afghanistan would be having the other ethnic communities like Hazara, Uzbek, Tajiks, and Taliban.
One thing.
Then I'm sorry. Let me just finish. Then what's their attitude? What would be their policy towards Pakistan? As we have to see where Pakistan stands with Afghanistan in future.
Something. Lots of people say if the foreign forces leave Afghanistan, there's going to be a civil war. Fine. There is going to be a civil war. Agreed. But that civil war would not be fueling insurgencies and violence into Pakistan. From Pakistan point of view,
exactly. That's what I want to know. What happened in Afghanistan
Pakistan has to ask
is their matter, but how does that reflect in Pakistan?
Pakistan has to ask this simple question: is a foreign occupied Afghanistan safer for Pakistan, or Afghanistan safer, which is for having no foreign troops, but perhaps a civil war between different ethnic communities? Now, civil war between different ethnic communities can be controlled by Pakistan, by Iran, by Turkey, and by the regional countries to bring peace if they're fighting amongst each other. But if there are foreign forces present, if there are foreign secret services present, and they are spreading violence and terror into the entire region, that's dangerous. And this is something we have to work on now. Throw out every foreign force soldier from Afghanistan, bring Afghans together. Even if there's a small infighting, it's manageable. It can be managed. And Uzbeks, Tajiks and Hazaras now clearly know that they cannot fight and defeat Afghan Taliban. So they have to coexist. Both parties know they have to coexist. The intention is there. Somebody just have to bring them together. And Indians will try to stop this. CIA will try to stop this, because the objective of Indians and CIA is to leave a mess behind the way they left a mess after the Soviet withdrawal in '88.
We will continue our conversation from here. Viewers, stay with us. We'll be right back after a short break. Viewers, we are talking and analyzing the situation, what's going to happen after the evacuation of NATO and U.S. allies from Afghanistan in 2014. Is an Afghanistan which has foreign influences in it better for Pakistan, or an Afghanistan without all those foreign influences is better for Pakistan? We're trying to figure out the recent development as well, in which it's been exposed that Afghan government was involved in creating the terrorism environment in Pakistan with Pakistan militants from Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan. U.S. recently caught Latifullah Masood from Afghanistan government, which was about to meet the Afghanistan intelligence agencies. Mr. Zahid Hamid, before going to the break, we figured out that Afghanistan without foreign factor would be better off with Pakistan, rather than having the foreign factors in which RAW and CIA are the major. And now we have the Afghan government involved as well. So we have a trilateral kind of relationship working against Pakistan. So after NATO and U.S. allies, they leave Afghanistan, if they do, then that Afghanistan will be better off for Pakistan. Now, do you think in reality, the million-dollar question is that U.S. and NATO allies will leave Afghanistan?
You see, that's what we have just said. They don't want to leave. And they are negotiating with Afghan Taliban to find an agreement where a justification for American presence is granted. Americans are expanding their bases. Americans are signing agreements with the Karzai government, Kabul government, so that even after elections, if a new president comes, the agreement would stand, allowing the Americans to stay in Afghanistan. But the fact of the matter is, now the state has come that all what America wants should not matter to Pakistan. Pakistan should decide what to do with the Americans the way we decided about the Soviets. We destroyed the Soviets in Afghanistan. We have the will, we have the potential, we have the experience, we have the contacts, we have the resources, we have the history with us to destroy superpowers in Afghanistan. We have done it before, we can do it again, and the time has come that we actually declare this as the Pakistan national policy, that Pakistan will not tolerate any foreign forces in Afghanistan after 2014. We should give them time to leave, like the way we gave opportunity to Soviets to withdraw. Soviets withdrew their forces from Afghanistan. They had about 500,000 Soviet troops in Afghanistan, and we gave them about good 1 year to leave, and they left after the Geneva Accord. Now right now, Pakistan should make a policy announcement that Pakistan do not want any foreign forces in Afghanistan. I'm sure Iran will join us, Turkey will join us, China will join us, and we should invite all Afghan factions, Uzbeks, Tajiks, Hazaras and Pashtuns, into Islamabad. We should open a dialogue. The Islamabad dialogue process should begin where all the neighboring regional countries is important. Without India, of course, India has got no business in Afghanistan. If India is present in Afghanistan, we should actually do with them what should be done to them. And
so Mr. Zahid Hamid, tell me this. You also mentioned that Karzai is also planning that within the next 6 months, when he will not be there, he should have at least someone who is his candidate, and he's planning towards that. And we saw that in the visit to London, an Afghan Peace Council, they have agreed that Afghan Peace Council will come to Pakistan and meet the Mullah brothers. So Karzai is working on a plan so that after he's gone, he still have influence in the involvement of the Afghan government. Like RAW is there, it's getting more and more hold in Afghanistan. How can we discourage that? You think that plan of Karzai will be eventually sorted out?
See, all the plans that these Americans, the CIA, Karzai, Indians are hatching in Afghanistan are simply because Pakistan has no Afghan policy. If Pakistan decides and declares an Afghan policy, as we said, we have the will, we have the means, we have the resources and the contacts to apply that as well.
Why don't we have an Afghan policy?
Because we don't have a foreign minister. Because we don't have a government in Islamabad. Because our prime minister is the foreign minister, and he's the defense minister, and he's the law minister. That's why. That's why, because Pakistan, the war that we are fighting, we don't have a termination strategy. Every war you fight, you have a termination strategy. The war that we are fighting, the war which has come into Pakistan, we are fighting it. We have lost 100,000 people. Still we don't know when and where and how we are going to end it up. And we are still fighting because waiting for the Americans to decide whatever they decide about Afghanistan. This is the insanity, the stupidity we find in the Islamabad government.
So we get to hear this report from New York Times first about Afghan government caught red-handed in having all this militancy going on against Pakistan. Why didn't we hear anything from our own Interior Ministry?
See, this is what we are saying. We have no government in Islamabad. We are too petrified. They're too humiliated. They're too insulted. They're too afraid to speak against the Americans. Look what Americans did to Nawaz Sharif when he went to USA just recently. On every issue that Nawaz Sharif raised, he was snubbed, humiliated, insulted, dragged, drubbed, thrown around, and ultimately hit like a baseball bat back to Pakistan. The fact of the matter, this is what they've done to him. Why would they respect this? The Army chief forces him to do it. Next Chief Justice forces him to do it. People come out on the street, force him to do it. But the fact of the matter is, this is going to be this must be the national demand of Pakistan, that we do not want any foreign forces in Afghanistan. We are giving till 2014 to the Americans. Get the hell out of here before we bury you in Afghanistan. We have done it before. We can do it again. And don't push us that we must do it, that we should do it again.
Now, after these reports that are being exposed, what do you think that Pakistan intelligence agencies, ISI, should be doing? What precautions they should be taking?
We have all the moral, legal, international right to hit them in Afghanistan. Plus, at the same time, we should take these reports to United Nations. We should take this report to every diplomatic forum in the world and declare India a terrorist state. 100,000 Pakistanis died. $100 billion worth of losses. The whole Pakistan is suffering, all because of raw supporting Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, an insurgent proxy terrorist group. RAW is doing it. India is a terrorist country. RAW is a terrorist organization. And still they declare Pakistan as the epicenter of terror. That's the irony of it. And this is what Pakistan do. We have an absolute open and shut case. We have caught them with their hands in the cookie jar. We have caught them red-handed. This is the time to hang them. And we should do it with every rope available at our disposal, whether inside Afghanistan or at the diplomatic level or at political level.
So if we eliminate the RAW factor and the CIA factor in supporting the TTP in Pakistan, then the peace talks with Taliban within Pakistan is the right direction?
Then we don't need the peace talks. We can crush them up in 2 days, as you say. You see, if you eliminate the RAW factor and the CIA factor behind TTP, TTP can't stand against Pakistan army for a week. They have no chance. This is the point. Whenever we operate against them, they simply melt into Afghanistan. They are protected by the Americans. They're protected by the Afghan government and the CIA and the RAW. That's why we are having a problem in defeating them. We don't need to talk to them. We just need to crush them.
What was the need of Afghan government recruiting the proxies, with Pakistani Taliban? What was the need? Karzai wanted what from Pakistan?
The objective is simple. They want to declare Pakistan a failed state. They want to create this global perception that Pakistan's nuclear program is in dangerous hands. Pakistan's nuclear weapons are going to fall into the hands of the terrorists. So for that, they needed to create terrorists who would do terrorism in Pakistan. The whole game was aimed at declaring Pakistan a failed state. And you can't do that unless you have terrorists with you, working for you. And if you don't have those terrorists, you create those. And this is what RAW has done. And Karzai, of course, as we said, he only needed Indian and American support to survive. He has no love for Pakistan. The man has betrayed Pakistan. All his life he has been living as a refugee in Pakistan while the Soviets were in Afghanistan. And now when he has been given authority and power in Afghanistan, he stepped back.
What do you think? What could be Karzai's plan in negotiating with Mullah brothers? Is he trying to ease off his relationship with Afghan Talibans?
You see, the fact of the matter is that Afghan Taliban were not very happy with Mullah brother as well. Mullah brother was negotiating. Mullah brother was somebody who was negotiating, who had broken off ranks from Afghan Taliban and was negotiating his own path with Karzai regime. And Afghan Taliban were not happy, Pakistan was not happy, and of course that's why he was taken into custody. And now he has been released. Where is he? We don't know. And why is Karzai blaming Pakistan where Mullah brother is? Let him go and find him. This huge country he has, Afghanistan, let him go and find Mullah Umar, Mullah brother, whatever Mullah he wants to find. Why is he blaming Pakistan for it? See, fact of the matter is Americans have not been defeated in Afghanistan because Pakistan had few Taliban prisoners in our jails. Let's be realistic. Americans have been defeated because Taliban have defeated them in the battlefield in Afghanistan without Pakistan's support. That's the fact. Rest of it is nonsense. What Americans want to do is this very critical point that you need to understand. While Americans want peace deals with Afghan Taliban, Americans want war between Pakistan and Afghan Taliban. This is something Pakistan should be very careful about. Americans actually want that Pakistan army should get into war with Afghan Taliban. And this is something Pakistan must resist at every cost, because if that happens, it will be further disaster for Pakistan. We won't be able to.
How do you see the relations of Pakistan army with Afghan Taliban?
Wonderful. Wonderful in the sense that both respect each other. We don't support each other. Afghan Taliban do not help Pakistan, because if they had helped Pakistan, they would have destroyed TTP already. But if Pakistan had helped Afghan Taliban, that would have been, the world would have known about this. But the fact of the matter is, Afghan Taliban have never declared war against Pakistan or against Pakistan army, and Pakistan army has never declared war against Afghan Taliban. And Pakistan army, the Pakistani nation, respects Afghan Pashtun resistance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zahid Hamid, for joining us. Viewers, as you saw, we tried to analyze the situation after the evacuation of NATO allies from Afghanistan in 2014. What would be the scenario in Afghanistan and how that would affect Pakistan? The good news is, as Mr. Zahid Hamid, according to him, that Pakistan army is in good relations with Afghan Taliban. So after the Karzai factor is eliminated in Afghanistan, Afghan Taliban and Pakistan army and the Pakistani government can have good relations towards each other. That can bring some peace in the region. That's it for today. See you all next Sunday. Until then, Allah Hafiz and good night.